This is Mainstream Metaphysics with your host, Nick Newmont.
Well, welcome to Mainstream Metaphysics. This just in, I'm Nick Newmont. I just wanted to make sure, in case you didn't know that after all these years. Welcome to another show, the lovely confines of Westlake Village, Conejo Valley Talk Radio. Behind the scenes is Ed Hunt back there taking charge. And look at, we've got dueling banners tonight. So it's in case I just want to turn around and do the weather. And I love the cosmic look of the banners. You know, if you read my Facebook page, the title is when I do astrology is the Astrological Weather Report with yours truly, and there's your astrological weather report back there on those banners. Everyone, how are you? How was your week? I hope it was good. If anyone says to me that it's hot outside, then leave California. It's July. It's supposed to be hot. What's the deal with that? It's hot, okay? Enjoy. That's why we're here. That's what we pay for, right? So tonight we're going to take a little bit of a different turn in terms of the show and topic and so on and so forth. Last week, we did the whole show on astrology, and some of those aspects that I talked about, they're going to be in action, over the last 2 weeks of this month. So in some cases, prepare for good things to happen, and then in some cases, gird your loins. Some of the things that, here Ed back there laughing. Look, one of the things that's going to come up with one of those aspects, especially you get Pluto and Uranus going on, there could be some people in relationships that might break up. That can happen because as people get deeper and deeper in touch with themselves, especially with Uranus and Pluto going on, the transcendental planets, people may find that they're contesting whatever it is that they don't like or don't want. So hold on. But I do expect, and I'm going to reiterate this part and move on from astrology. I do expect some really good things to be happening over the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned. And if you are interested in how this affects your chart, and a number of people have contacted me for their personal charts, get in touch with me. You can email me at newmont@gmail.com or call the office line at 818-865-8770. And every once in a while, that's going to come up on the banner that Ed puts up there. So when we back up for a moment to this past Sunday, we had the Merlin Golden Arrow event. Myself and our good friend Alexandra, who channels Golden Arrow. We had a very nice turnout live at the center and on Zoom. And our good friend back there behind the scenes was there, right, Ed?
Yes, indeed.
Yep, it was well received. Now, I, again, in channeling Merlin and then doing a dual channel with Golden Arrow, I have no idea what Merlin said. People have said a couple things, but things were very well received. So evidently there was a lot of good direction. I wouldn't say it was good news. It was just good direction for people who wanted information from the spirits. And we will do that roughly in another six months, probably right after the holidays, somewhere in there, December, January. So stay tuned for that. And also, I want to acknowledge that I said this the other day, about people that do things behind the scenes. Ed, directs this show. I couldn't do this with my own camera like this. And the other day, the setup that we had at the center was done by, of course, my wife, Audrey. And I pointed out to the group, not just a patronizing thank you to Audrey, but when you watch a movie and the credits run at the end of a movie, especially a big budget movie, probably maybe 5% of the names that come up are the actors and the talent. The other 95% is everybody that's behind the scenes, from directors to writers, producers, the grips, the gaffers, the makeup people, the music people, the location people, and it's unbelievable. And so when people do things behind the scenes, the only time they're acknowledged, other than a thank you, is at the awards ceremony if they are nominated and they win. So Audrey definitely gets an award for the stuff that she does at our center for, what she makes things happen and makes things look good. So when we have events, they're top notch. So I'm very appreciative of her and the stuff that she does. Although I get every once in a while I'll get a technical brainstorm, as I did today, and I won't go into that. I figured something out on a computer and actually laughed at myself for being able to do that. But that's not going to happen real often. I've had a lot of time to think about, this tonight's show and where I want to go with it. And a lot of times, the topics that come up in these shows are born out of interaction with clients, and you know that as I am a psychic, including the astrology and numerology, the cards, and then being a hypnotherapist, and then of course the energy work that I do. Well, tonight it's going to flow between therapy and energy work and understanding the psychology and the metaphysics of key components of us. And the inspiration for tonight's show comes from working with some clients where the concept of lying is showing up. And that is people lying to each other. There is a little bit of one client withholding information, and I will see that client very soon, so that is going to be addressed. And asked this couple that Audrey and I in tandem work with in various ways, why lie? And it's very fascinating, the answers that people give when they talk about lying. As one is maybe to protect the other, not wanting to hurt their feelings. Others, or lies, are a little bit more of just a cover-up and not being authentic. And some of it is just hiding evidence. So I asked this one person last week, so do you find that withholding information is a form of lying? And the response I got was, yes, it is. So we want to look at that because there's intention behind that. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. And then I was working with another client who is embroiled in legal proceedings with a soon-to-be former partner, and the partner is lying when it comes to the legalities, or say the legal people that are involved. And so this is the first part about lying, that when you lie and you tell a story, you can tell a story and you remember how you told that. When you tell another lie, then you have to remember the story to cover this lie. And then if you tell another lie, and it could be all about the same topic where you're just making up stuff, you're going to have to remember what you're saying. And then when you get to a point where, in the case of this legal situation, where there are a ton of lies being told, and it looks like, a TV monitor where there's multiple channels up there, the brain can only retain that for so long. And at some point, the person is going to say the wrong thing in their eyes and actually tell the truth because they can't remember all these different lies that they've told that have to do with one topic. So, it is lack of integrity, it's dishonesty, it's ill-intended. And when we look at something like this, even in something that we would describe as like negative intentions, and this is what I have down in front of me, there's intention in everything. So when we set out to do something, we look at intention. Can we show that?
Yes.
So when we make up our mind that we want to do something, the first thing is intention. And that means that in our mind, something is going to happen. We see it as already have happened. So we see it as in the now. The next thing is inspiration. Well, inspiration is a derivative of the word spirit. So you'd like to think that when we're talking about something that emanates from spirit, that is done with good intentions. But sometimes people have a reason for doing things that inspires them to go sideways. The next thing is motivation. And motivation, it comes from the outside. What is the motivation? To get something, to hurt someone. We always like to think of motivation, our motives, we'd like them to be good, but sometimes people have ill-intended motives. And then the last thing, in terms of manifesting something, is incentive. An incentive is basically what's in it for me. Why am I going after this? Ultimately, what do I want out of this? So when we think of this as being on a good path, we set our intention. What's underneath all that to drive us to do that is the inspiration. Sometimes we need help from the environment or outside sources. So that's where motivation kicks in. And by the way, motivation is one of the key components of the subconscious and theory of mind. And finally, incentive. This is where the success is. Like, for instance, with athletes, they'll have a contract, but many athletes have incentive clauses. So above and beyond whatever they get paid, a baseball player may get more money because of so many home runs, so many runs batted in, their batting average. If the team wins the division, championship, World Series, those are incentive clauses. So people look to incentivize themselves. But what happens when people lie? Well, that's what we have to ask. What is the intention? Because intention, when we set an intention, it's something that's very powerful. When we set intentions, this is where we have it in our mind that this is what we're doing. And when the intentions are strong, we feel that no one's going to stop us to get to that point. Now, in intention, okay, when people say, this is part of this, I know, claiming that they know something, they've got it. If you really know, then what you claim to be aware of is happening, and you take the K off of it, and you have now. To know is to be in the now. When behavior is known, and then of course this little trick here, you take the KN off, then you own it. So believing or in something does not mean that you're living that thing or behaving as such. Affirmations only work when we change our behavior. And then we go into the 4 words that we've discussed. So I look at what drives people. Where is the passion to be so adamantly in touch with wanting to do something that could result in negative circumstances? And the more I put thought into this, I look at what comes from the heart chakra, because in us, in our chakras, our energy centers, we have thoughts. And if you could see a chakra, if you're able to, you would see it as a cone-shaped device that spins the point down at very key, important points of our body, and they represent very key points of life and how we act and interact in our everyday life. It's not so mystical. They are defined as we relate to them. And a lot of our psyche is in some of the more predominant chakras, like the sacral chakra. But focusing on the heart chakra, this is where our passion comes from. But the heart chakra is also the love center. So what's that have to do with lying? Well, the heart being the love center is where truth is, okay? And when we talk about a chakra being open and fulfilled, we would think of the heart chakra as being in a loving space and a loving condition. Now, in all the chakras, remember, as a physical being, we are born of love, we are made of love, but does that feeling of love emanate and continue to flow throughout a lifetime? Sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on the mood or the attitude that the person is in. And while the chakras are full of energy, they're full of thoughts. The chakras are thought containers, so everything that we think and feel is stored electromagnetically in each one of the chakras. The chakra that's down between your legs, the root chakra, this is your primal survival chakra. This is your fears, your fight-flight mechanism, your ego, your confidence. The sacral chakra, the one that's at the navel, that is everything that has to do with manifestation, intimacy, self-worth, self-esteem, pride, guilt, shame, and remorse. Isn't that fascinating that the sexual center also houses guilt, shame, and remorse? And then, of course, the solar plexus, the stomach chakra, that's your conscious mind and all the digestive organs. The heart chakra rules the love, giving and receiving love, the heart's desire, and of course the whole thoracic cavity is part of the heart chakra, meaning heart, bronchial tubes, lungs, and then the throat chakra is your communication, the ability to take responsibility for what we do and say, and of course the throat chakra rules the throat, the mouth, ears, nose, sinuses, eustachian tubes. It covers a lot of ground. And then your third eye is your vision and intuition. We refer to it as the perception filter of reality. And of course the crown chakra, the one on the top, that is your connection to spirit, and you're attached to your life purpose at the crown chakra. So there is psychology in each of the chakras, even though they are electromagnetic metaphysical devices. And, along the way, when my students become more advanced, there is, I can put that down. There is a course called the Psychology of the Chakras, and that points out the conditions of the chakras and the aura with damage or issues within the psyche. And though that points out aspects of us that are problematic in life and how we think and how we feel, and that relates very much so to conditioning. Now, how do chakras operate? And this is all of them. Well, they operate on electromagnetic attraction and repulsion. When we think of chakras being open, if you use a pendulum, the pendulum is going to go in a clockwise fashion to indicate open, and any other movement means it's closed. And when the chakra is open, it's basically breathing. Energy is moving in and out. There are various ways that chakras block, negative thoughts, and also fear. Well, given that the heart chakra is the love center, and that houses, the duality of love and truth, fear and untruth. Well, can that be lies? Absolutely. So when people feel compelled to lie repeatedly, they're not in love, meaning they're not in a space of love. I'm not saying they can't be in love with someone, but they're not in a place of love. And this is something that has to be treated through, as a therapist, in my case as a hypnotherapist, but also in the energy work that we do. And here's the fascinating thing. When a person lies frequently, what happens is that they have to keep making up stories, but a lot of times they don't remember exactly what they said, so the story changes a little bit. Well, why does that happen? Does it mean that they have a bad memory? No, it doesn't. What happens is the body resonates naturally with love and truth. And so the body itself, and I've never said this before, in the blood that flows through us is basically truth serum. We are inclined to the truth. So when people lie, they have to make a conscious effort to do it. So when a person lies and they go, I don't know, I don't remember, yeah, they do remember. They just don't want to admit to the severity of how they lied. You know, if someone told a lie from a long time ago and that's pointed out, they're going to know that whatever they did happened. They just choose not to remember it as an excuse or to fend off the accusations or the confrontation. So when we work with people now and understanding the heart chakra and what it represents, the ability to love and be loved, your heart's desire, the gifts of generosity and altruism. When a person is a liar in some capacity, they're going to be a taker because they're vibrating the negative frequency of the heart. The other thing is, and this is where Audrey would come into play in something like this, because she has this incredible graph that she puts up for people, and it shows the vibration of frequency, that when a person is in anger, it vibrates at around 125, call them cycles, and when they're in appreciation, gratitude, I believe it's 700. And that's something when Audrey's podcast, she can elaborate on, and I'm sure Audrey could take what I'm presenting tonight and take it to a whole nother level because of the way she approaches things. So notice I said the bottom of the scale is anger, all right? Do people lie when they're in a good mood? No, they don't. When people lie, they're defensive, they're not happy with something. And so this client that I'm referring to, one of the things that I'm going to get into with this individual is the anger. What is the anger all about that drives this person to lie to the degree that they're lying? And this person is having a challenge in the romantic relationship that they're in because of the lying, the negative vibration of the heart. Instead of it being love and truth, it's fear and untruth. So then that begs the question, also asking it rhetorically now, what are you afraid of? What is your fear? And one of this question has been asked by Audrey to this person, and the fear, believe it or not, is loss of freedom. That has to be looked at even deeper. So why can't people just be honest? Well, as I said earlier, sometimes it's afraid of hurting people. It's a bit of a cover-up. It's a cover-up of their own actions. The universal commandment, there's only one, and that is honor thyself, which means come from a place of love, truth, and integrity within that you radiate out to those around you. Now, if we are not honoring that, what are we emanating or radiating out? Well, in the situation of this relationship, both have lied at times. The one I'm working with has lied way more. And the other party realizes the error of their ways in lying and claims not to do that anymore. So this individual has attracted this kind of energy to them. by putting that out there. And when I say radiate, well, that energy, because the chakras are part of your aura, the definition of your aura is the chakra is a vibrating resonance chamber. So you're either resonant or dissonant. But the aura, the technical definition of the aura, aside from being a energy and light body, is a luminous body that surrounds and interpenetrates the physical body and emits its own characteristic radiation. So that last part is important. Radiates its own characteristic, emanates its own characteristic radiation. So this is what the person is giving out. Now, when the chakras reverse, they're counterclockwise. Instead of being energetically, not attractive, not physically, when the chakras are open, we are energetically attractive. When the chakras close, due to the circumstances that we're in, the chakra is repulsive. The pendulum is counterclockwise or closed completely. So these are things that we have to explain to clients in great detail, because when people get into the concept of the spiritual bypass, which we have said on this show and Audrey's show a number of times, that this is the claim that a person knows something, studies something, watched something, but life hasn't changed in accordance with the professed beliefs. Is that a form of lying? Yes, but to oneself. Okay? So if we can't be honest with ourselves, then how are we going to be honest with another person? If we're not in a loving space with ourselves, especially the heart chakra, how can we be in a loving space with someone else? We have to learn how to commit to ourselves before we can commit to another person. And this is going to be a big challenge for this individual, and how this gets presented soon. And this individual is going to have to look at this. Now, the easy part is already there, because in any kind of conversation, especially with a client, you don't want to just call them out and say you're a liar. The admission of lies is already there. So now we have to take it and work with it, and work with where all this started. And by the way, this started in childhood with this individual. And also, it's learned behavior. So you remember when we talk about theory of mind, that between birth and 8 years old, we learn how to think and communicate, and we gain our suggestibility from our interaction with the mother. So whatever the mother does, for instance, simply if the mother's a worrier, the kids are going to be a worrier because of what they observe between birth and 8 years old. Now, what happens if there are ages of kids separate and there's enough gap in age, say there's like 4 siblings, and the oldest one has experienced the worrying mom, but the mom got adjusted and she's different, and the youngest one coming through sees calm mom. She's unique and different. She's chill, having a good time. She's not as strict. Then that kid's not a worrier. And it's not passed on from child to child to child. But say, for instance, what if a much older sibling, say the oldest sibling is now a teenager, and this is a little one that's 2, 3, 4 years old. There's a good bit of difference. And the oldest sibling, especially a female, because it's a female caregiver that's going to do this. So say the oldest sister is 10 years older than the little kid, and that teenager lies all the time in the midst of that kid, and say the mother works more. Then the kid is going to take on the traits of the oldest sister. In this case, as we're talking about lying. And, the kid is going to figure, well, if she lies, then I can lie. What's the big deal? So again, it's learned behavior. Within the realm of the heart chakra, we also have to look at the concept of healing. Well, the heart chakra is naturally green. all the chakras have a different color. And so green is this color of healing, the state of the heart. And of course, within the heart components, as we said, we have gratitude, appreciation. But the body part that I didn't share yet was the thymus. Each chakra has a ruling gland. Your root chakra is the adrenals, the sacral chakra in a woman, it's the ovaries, in a man it's the testes. Your solar plexus chakra is the pancreas. Coming down the crown is the pituitary, third eye is pineal, throat is thyroid, and then the heart is the thymus. And the thymus is very important because that's your immune system, and that stops growing and around 10 to 12 years old, more like 12, where your spleen is continuing to function. So this is where your T cells are made and stored, and you have enough, even if it stops growing from 10 to 12, to be stored mostly for the rest of your life. So, the concept of healing is literally in the gland that's next to the heart chakra. So if we are doing things that are unloving from an early age, what is that doing to us? It allows us not to feel good about ourselves. We put ourselves in an unloving state where giving, at least in an altruistic way, is not going to be very obvious. And if there is giving, then there's going to be giving for a reason, all right? Giving to get something back. Everything will always be, some form of a trade. And it's fascinating that when you get into the back and front, include the back heart chakra too, when the heart chakra is open, we see people in our lives, we see humanity as helping us. When the back heart is closed and shut down, we see humanity as in a blaming way, that people are in our way, blocking us from achieving what we need to achieve. So it's fascinating that this concept of blame, is deeply embedded in the heart chakra, where in the past, and Ed, they're going to love to see this, for a long time now, and I realize some of the writing is small, but I'll go through this with you. For most of the years I've been teaching energy work, we equivocate the victimization loop with the throat chakra, because the throat chakra is taking responsibility for what we do and say, as opposed to playing the victim. But in cases like this, where there is lying going on, there is some of the victimization loop, and we do see the repeated behavior. So it begins with what I like to call the uns, U-N-S. The uns contribute to the problem. Unloving, uncommunicative, unappreciative, unfaithful, uncooperative. And by the way, in the person that I'm working with, every one of those uns comes into play. So what happens? Well, there's a circumstance that will set this in motion, all right? And it can happen in any aspect of life. On the job, with a lover, with friends, with coworkers. And so we call it the victimization. And then it starts to slant up toward the loop, and we see judgment. So I draw it like this because every time I present this, I liken this loop to a Ferris wheel. Because yes, people get on the ride. And so judgment is the ramp that leads up to the Ferris wheel, okay? That's how you get on the ride. Now, if we can realize before it's too late that instead of judgment, that we can come to a place of understanding and compassion. And what I mean by that is, I get it. I see what I'm doing here. Being compassionate to the self and that would be some of the, in the heart chakra, starting to love yourself again. Then, of course, if we stay on track, we would release judgment. But for now, we're going to assume, especially the situation I'm working with, we are beyond judgment. Now the person has gone on the ramp and they've gone on the ride. And the first part of this is anger, along with resentment. Now, if the person recognizes what the anger is all about and what we like to call righteous anger, that can be the motivator to make the person mad as hell, and they're not going to take it anymore. And so even though, I know, Ed, even though they got on the car on the ride, it is moved up a little bit, but they can jump off. And that is rage. That's that I'm mad as hell. But what happens if they internalize it? Well, this is a victimization loop. So now they go into victim anger, which is basically poor me. Okay? And when anger is internalized, most of the world knows that it's depression. Depression sets in. And now it's stored inside instead of being externalized. So at that point, once we go into victimization, anger, and depression, now the ride moves up. And now we go into blame. And at this point, that internalized anger is pointing fingers, saying, it's not my fault, he or she did it. Now, believe it or not, sometimes the blame can be self-deprecating. A person can be a self-victimizer, where they're saying, I'm not worth it, I deserve this, I can't believe I'm so stupid, and that can be just as bad. Once we're on blame, now the ride is moving up, and from blame we go to, I'm not responsible. The person doesn't realize their own actions or participation. There can be a lack of communication of feelings or boundaries. When a person says, I'm not responsible, they're basically saying that I wasn't there at the time. I have no idea what's going on. You ask them. And in fact, it's interesting that a lot of times when there are couples involved in therapy, a lot of times one of the people says, well, if you want to go to therapy, you go. This is you. This isn't me. That's one of those things of saying not responsible. And even though one of the partners in the relationship could be a little stronger or a little bullying, when a person does that and they claim, you go to, I'm not going, I have no part in this, even an aggressive person is playing the victim. And most of the time it's not seen like that, but they are playing the victim. Now the ride continues. Now we're about to, the Ferris wheel is about at the top and it's picking up speed now. Now there's claims of no control. The person does not recognize power of choice on decisions. I tell people all the time, and so does Audrey, everything is a choice. In fact, I said today to a client, and this was a good client I'm working with, we want to stay out of those comments that are actually euphemisms. We just automatically say them. Well, he or she makes me feel. No, a person chooses to feel based on the reaction that they have as to what that other person did. And that's where the claims of no control come into play. They don't realize the decision that they made to get them to this point. Now, when a person says claims of no control, they're giving up control, and then we come over here where the person loses control of the situation. Now, it's coming down now, and it's moving fast. Once they have lost control, then people, who are the environment, take control, or, some kind of outsiders have it. Now they're moving forward. They've got the power now. And then it comes down toward the bottom, and what you see here is a recreation of events. And then it starts all over again. And they'll tell the same story over and over again. It'd be the same abusive boss, same lousy boyfriend or girlfriend, greedy friends, whatever you want to call it. This goes round and round until a person breaks the pattern. Well, we do want to know, how do we break the pattern? Well, and by the way, there has to be a commitment to change the behavior. So we go from understanding compassion to releasing judgment and realize that's not important anymore, to be judgmental about it. That's being harsh. And once we release judgment, then the person can take responsibility for their own actions. Now, sometimes this can be done in energy work if it's not too severe or too old, but a lot of times a person will have to do timeline work. Audrey loves to have people do those. And that's where you take that art paper or big long butcher paper that's as bigger than your dining room table, and they start and they go from birth, and they do this timeline all the way to the present, illustrating positive events, negative events, when it happened, what happened, and most importantly, because the way they're drawn with the severity, it looks like an EKG. Doesn't it have something to do with the heart, the EKG? And so what we call that is the emotional impact. So how did you feel? Angry, frustrated, victimized, elated, grateful, joyous. There's positive and negative reactions that go along with doing a timeline. And what does the timeline do? It illustrates repeated behavior, especially when you have them do the timeline on a particular subject. In this case, we'd be doing it on relationships, going back to the observances of the parents, because that's when relationships start, in the first 15 years of life, long before there's any kind of romantic entanglement. And a lot of times, and I'll illustrate this verbally, with taking responsibility. So if a person is in the throes of divorce, then to that person, without blame, and by the way, there's no blame. This is California no-fault insurance. This is simply taking accountability for the actions one took. So a person has to take responsibility for the act of getting divorced. Then they have to take responsibility for the act of getting separated. Then they take responsibility for being in the relationship while it's gone sour, take responsibility for being in the relationship, the marriage, while it plateaued, and of course taking responsibility for the time that the relationship was good, meaning the part of the marriage, the choice to get engaged, taking responsibility for choosing to date that person monogamously. And then we take that all the way back to taking responsibility for when they met that person. And the interesting question comes up as, was there a form of lack, need, or desperation that was occurring when these two people meet? In other words, what energy, attraction and repulsion, especially from the heart, was being put out that drew that kind of vibration to that individual? What was the heart saying? Was it saying, I'm desperate, I just broke up with someone? Oh, that comes up a lot. Well, I just broke up with so-and-so, and so was the person in a loving state if they're in a place of lack, need, or desperation? No. Well, what's that have to do with lying? Because if they think they're ready for a relationship after just breaking up with someone, then they are lying to themselves. And if a person continues to lie to themselves, they'll rationalize the situations and circumstances to make it okay to do what they're doing. And they may be honest and tell the person, yeah, recently I got separated or divorced. I'm single again. Now, if the party on the other end that they've met goes along with that and is interested in being with them when they're still hurting and just coming out of a divorce, or maybe not even really divorced yet, what does that say about that other party's heart chakra vibration? Are they really in a place of love? No, not if their standards are higher, then they're going to refuse that. I liken this. Audrey uses the car analogy. I like the food analogy. It's like, so if you want love in your life and you go to a great restaurant and say you order something like Chateaubriand, which takes a long time to cook, all right? A lot of places it'd be a roast chicken because it takes a long time. You order what you want, okay? So say the waiter comes out with chopped steak, okay? They bring it to your table, and sometimes they do that. Sometimes they come out with the wrong order. So the person who's desperate says, well, I really ordered this, but I'm really hungry, just leave this. Well, that's a story that we're telling to the universe, is that we're not really ready. We don't want that great thing. If you're settled for the chopped steak, Salisbury steak, and in some of these cases, this is a Swanson TV dinner Salisbury steak, and it's very confusing because the dessert, the cherry cobbler, is spilled over into the mashed potatoes, and the corn is spilled into that. Ed knows exactly what I'm talking about back there, because way back in the day, Ed and I are age contemporary, that kind of stuff went on, right? So if you're settling for that, then you're not really ready for that incredible thing that you ordered that you thought you wanted. You thought you wanted it, but evidently you don't really want it. So there you go. And so you're in a place of lack, desperation, and need. That's what you brought to you. Now, on the other hand, if the person is really ready and they really want love in their life and they're honest with themselves, they'll look at that waiter, the food runner in today's restaurants, okay? I have to get caught up, or otherwise my daughters that are in that business is going to yell at me. It's a food runner that puts it down. You have to say, no, this is not what I ordered. I don't care if mine's not ready yet. I will wait. That's what I ordered and that's what I want. Well, now we're telling the universe that we're in a good place with ourselves. We're in a place of love with ourselves, and we're willing to wait for what we want. One time this client, and by the way, at this point, has never been in a true long-term loving relationship, going over what she thought she wanted. I guarantee you, she sat at my desk telling me she wanted, this ideal relationship. And then she says to me, well, but in the meantime, can I have a toy? A boy toy. And I said, no. And she said, why not? I said, because you're telling the universe you're not ready for love. And what I explained to her is exactly what happened to her. So what happens is, let's say what you want is a matter of time away from you. Say you're really working on yourself. You're doing everything. You're going to create that love in your life. Okay? So when we have interludes, I like that word. When we have interludes, what happens is that tells the universe, not ready, so we push it out. Imagine you're at the restaurant and you ordered a lot of things, and you're still messing with your salad, your appetizer, and they're saying your entree is going to be ready pretty soon. Can you tell them to hold it a little bit? Not ready. Okay. Now, as I push the book out there, these are years now. These aren't months. So you want another interlude just to pass time. Yeah, but man doesn't live by bread alone. Not ready. Now we're pushing it out there. And we're creating this big gap in time. And there aren't as many toys. Well, I'll find another toy. Really not ready. Okay? And that is what happened. And to this day, this individual is in their late 60s, is not in a relationship, and will never be. Now, this whole concept of love and truth, fear and untruth, why would a person fear love? That is a great anomaly, okay? And those words criticize each other. Like when people say, punishing kids, I put the fear of God in him. Those are mutually exclusive terms. God is love. There is no fear coming from God. God doesn't create fear. God simply creates. How we react to something is how we react. You could be afraid of an animal because you've been conditioned to be afraid of a dog, a cat, whatever, a parrot. So when we're not in a good place with ourselves, not in a loving place, then if we're not lying to other people, then we are lying to ourselves. And the important part is to get into why. What happened? What is fear-based? What is the person afraid of that they refuse to have love in their life, an interactive love? Well, in the heart chakra, this is actually very important because the heart chakra, unlike the other chakras, evolves. All the other colors, the red one stays red, the yellow one stays yellow, the orange one stays orange, the third eye stays blue. But as we learn to love in our lives, the heart chakra grows and the green is there. And when we learn to love in our personal lives, personal interaction, that's really love, then there is a layer of pink that forms. So it kind of looks like this really cool looking parfait. And then when we get deep into humanitarian works of service, where we really are helping and giving humanity, then purple forms. And then if you really get to the point where you're just saintly, there's not many on the planet like that, then gold can actually form eventually later in life. But the client that I'm talking about, the one that's more mature and never been in a relationship, that when I looked at what's called the chakra matrix, which is this multicolored, six-sided snowflake mandala-looking pattern that repeats itself, her heart chakra has no pink in it, which means her capacity for personal love is very, very low. So this individual has actually said that having an animal like a dog would be a burden. And so, animals give unconditional love. Yes, you have to feed them and take care of them, but really to what degree? A cat, you change the litter box. A dog, you take for a walk. You play with them. You throw the ball. This person can't even do that. So there isn't this real altruistic, genuine ability to give and receive love. And in conversations, deep conversations I've had with that individual, that comes out demonstrating the behavior. It's just not there naturally. So with the one that I have coming up, with where the lies are involved, this has to be pointed out that the lies are going to create more lies and more lies and more lies, but eventually the body, which houses love, is going to emanate the truth. Eventually, in all the lies, it's either something she says or something that she does that's going to reveal the truth. Now, if a person, because the sense of fidelity and loyalty is also in the heart chakra too. So if this person goes and claims to love the other party, but then goes and has an affair, see, then we have more lies, okay? And I'm adding spices into the stew to enhance the drama of the story. So, and then what happens if that person has an extramarital affair and then lies about it? All right? So you see that a lie needs a lie to cover the lie, a lie again to cover the lie, and cover those lies. So it becomes this, if you can envision this knotted ball of yarn that takes forever to sort out. And when we go through this taking responsibility on the timeline, ultimately we have to get this kind of person to forgiveness. And in this case, this is going to be very challenging because when we take responsibility, which is not blame, that is basically saying from this point on, I take responsibility for my actions and I will not subject myself to this again because I'm making new, better, different choices. And that's when we can go into forgiveness, which is the full, call it the healing of the victimization loop. Inner forgiveness. Before it's outer forgiveness. It's inner forgiveness that we're looking at and talking about here. forgiveness of the self, not repeating the self-destructive, unloving behavior. So, and this is going to have to be, it's easy to lay this out, in a show like this, but this is going to have to be presented a chunk at a time to an individual like this, where the lies are chronic. And also, for those of you out there that do go to a healer, your doctor, your therapist, you want to be honest, because any kind of practitioner, medical, physical, whatever that is has to take what you say and the symptoms that you present to treat you. And as I've said, especially as a hypnotherapist, if you're not telling me the whole story, I can mistreat. And hypnotherapy changes behavior. So, in terms of information that was able to get back from co-sessions this person had with Audrey, because all the information goes back and forth from Audrey to me and back and forth, that we find out that I haven't been getting all the truth. So that's going to be a little bit of a confrontation, begging for truth, so can treat the situation properly. Sometimes people lie because they're embarrassed. That does happen at times. So that can be forgiven. And in this, with me on my end as a therapist, and Audrey would agree, I'm not coming from a place of judgment. I'm coming from compassion and understanding. I don't have to release judgment because there is none. I can only take responsibility for how I treat this person based on the evidence that they give me. And then again, I go into forgiveness with the client. Okay? I know you weren't telling me the truth before. I forgive you. Can we move forward in complete honesty and integrity? And I would expect that I would get the answer that I'm looking for in regards to that. So, if you, not any of my clients, I believe so, but if you recognize someone that's close to you that's lying, you want to take a good look at that and try to get an understanding of why they would lie. What's their intention? What's their inspiration? What's their motivation? What's their incentive for lying? And if you can use those 4 words as sort of an outline for getting into the lying, it can help the situation. And also, if it's someone that's very close to you, you can actually say to them, which is healthy, look, I love you, but can you please, honor our relationship and being honest with me, and see how they respond. It's not a good idea to get in someone's face and use a lot of colorful language and call them a liar, which is what a lot of people do. That's not going to help the situation. That's going to make them even more defensive, and they're going to lie on top of it. So you want to get them out of the mentality and the emotions of lying and get them to be open. When it comes to, and we'll finish in a moment here, when it comes to people in bad relationships, instead of being honest with their partner and saying, I just can't do this anymore, they'll go look for someone else to get involved with and create this sort of safety net that they have someone else to fall back on, and then eventually get caught in the affair so that they double hurt the other party. So they didn't tell them the truth. The truth doesn't feel good if someone breaks up with you, but at least have the chutzpah to tell a person, look, I just can't do this. And then move on, instead of going and finding someone else. And by the way, the rebound relationship 99% of the time doesn't work. That becomes a lie as well. So anyway, I hope this has been helpful. It's your heart chakra is there physiologically, it's there metaphysically, it's there emotionally and mentally, and when you lie, you are in some way, shape, or form because you know what you're saying isn't right. It hurts your heart. Okay, you are damaging yourself. You're damaging the part of the body that is represented in the communication that's not authentic or true. Think about this, folks. Thank you for watching. It's a lot of wordy and a lot of stuff, but it is food for thought, right? Especially when you're ordering from the big waiter in the universe. Wait for what you want. It's worth it. Hold out for your standards, for what you think you deserve. You'll be glad you did. Thanks so much for watching Mainstream Metaphysics. I am Nick Newmont. I will be back with our next show, and upcoming shows will have guests. I'm looking forward to that. As always, take care of yourself. Take care of those around you. Thanks for watching again. Good night.